If I were you, I wouldn't pull that trigger. The moment froze like glass in mid-shatter. A single sentence, spoken by a black maid with a calmness that didn't belong in a room about to explode, sliced through the glittering air of the ballroom. The man holding the pistol jerked in place, startled he was the one caught off guard. From across the room, Maya Williams stood just 15 feet away, her slate-gray apron crisp, her dark eyes sharp. Until now, she was just another figure in the background. But she had been watching him the entire evening quietly, intently, as he slithered through the crowd, never making eye contact, never drinking, always counting exits. She knew what he was before he even reached into his jacket. I said, Maya repeated, "Don't pull that trigger." The man stiffened, but quickly tried to cover. "What the hell are you talking about?" he barked, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'm a guest, lady. You want to yell at someone? Try the guy who bumped into me earlier." He forced a laugh and looked around. "Y'all see this? She's accusing random people now? What is this maid's justice?" But no one laughed. The tension was thick. Eyes moved back and forth between Maya and the man with the gun. She stepped closer, slow and steady. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "You came in through the staff corridor," Badge said, AV consultant, "but you didn't have any equipment. No clipboard, no tools. Just a blazer that was a little too snug for you." He frowned, lips pressed into a tight line. "You took 2 tours around the ballroom," Maya continued. "Didn't take a single hors d'oeuvre, didn't shake a hand, didn't speak to a soul. You never looked anyone in the eye, but you kept looking at the exits clockwise, like a loop." He shifted uncomfortably. "You refused water. Adjusted your right ear every few minutes. Earpiece was too small. You held your right shoulder stiff, probably compensating for the weight of the weapon under the jacket. Shut your damn mouth," he growled, stepping forward. "And now you're standing exactly in the one corner that had a blind spot before the security cameras were reprogrammed," she added, eyes locked with his. "But you didn't know that changed 20 minutes ago. If you feel for the character, tap like to show your support. And comment where you are watching from. Someone nearby might be watching this with you too." The room was dead silent. He laughed again, but this time it cracked. "Oh, please. You watch too many movies. What do you think this is? Some kind of—" "I know what this is," Maya cut in, calm as steel. "It's a hit, and you're the guy sent to pull the trigger." His face twisted. "No more pretending. You just couldn't keep your mouth shut, could you?" he snapped. "Should have stayed in your lane, you little nobody." He raised the gun higher. "You don't belong here," he spat. "You think putting on a uniform and carrying trays makes you part of their world. You're just the help, always will be. And now you ruined something bigger than yourself." A murmur rose among the crowd. "Who is she? She's not even scared. Is she crazy? She's gonna get us all killed. She should know her place. She's just a maid." But Maya didn't hear them anymore. Her eyes were on the man's hand. The tension in his shoulders. The flicker of uncertainty in his stance. She inched forward, and in one breath, launched toward him. She was fast, but not fast enough. A blur slammed into her from behind. A heavy blow to the ribs, then the back of her skull. Her knees buckled as white flashed behind her eyes. She crumpled to the marble floor. Breath knocked from her lungs. The second man, shorter, leaner, in a waiter's uniform, stood over her with a stun baton, grinning. "Didn't see me, did you, hero?" he sneered. Her fingers twitched against the floor. Her vision blurred, blood pounded in her ears. And suddenly, everything dissolved. She was in Syria again. Heat, dust, screams in her comms, gunfire from the west window. She remembered shouting into her mic, "Hold position, I'm coming." But she was too far. By the time she reached the safe house, Ramirez was gone. Just a pair of dog tags in the silence that followed her home. She had failed him, failed her team, and when she looked in the mirror for weeks after, she didn't see an agent. She saw a ghost. "Maya," a voice snapped her back. Loud, urgent. "Maya." She blinked. Bright ballroom lights flooded back into view. She turned her head groggily toward the sound. Cameron Wade. He was standing now, hands partially raised, his face pale, strained with worry. And right behind him, too close, was the first gunman. The assassin had taken hold of Wade by the collar, pressing the muzzle of his pistol tightly against his temple. "Try anything else," the gunman growled, and the billionaire dies. Gasps rippled across the crowd. Meanwhile, the second assailant had moved swiftly back across the floor, gun now trained on Arthur Blake, still cowering behind the buffet table. The guests were frozen. No one dared breathe. Maya, still on her knees, wiped the blood from her temple. Teeth clenched. She slowly pushed herself upright. At that exact moment, Wade's eyes met hers. He was breathing hard, the gun cold against his temple, yet he wasn't looking at his attacker. He was looking at her. She didn't flinch. Her gaze was steady, unshaken, as if nothing had changed since she was just a background maid in his grand estate. And then she blinked once, slowly, deliberately. A signal. Wade blinked back. And in that fleeting second of unspoken understanding, he knew this woman wasn't just a maid. She was something else, something deadly, and something ready. "Who the hell are you?" Wade thought, heartbeat thudding. Maya's eyes flicked downward subtly toward the gun, then back up, a silent message. "Be ready to move." Wade shifted his weight slightly. Just enough. The assassin didn't notice his eyes still locked on Maya. "You all want to know why I'm here?" the gunman snarled. "You think this is just some lunatic with a grudge? Number. This is justice." Maya's fingers curled into fists. The man gestured toward Arthur Blake. "That man, your guest, sold technology meant to protect soldiers. He sold it to foreign black markets. People died. U.S. troops died. My brother died." Blake's face turned white. "You think this is about money?" "I don't care about money. I care about the lies that built this damn empire. I care about people like him who profit from blood, and people like you," he jabbed the gun into Wade's skull, "who throw parties to celebrate it." Wade flinched. "I didn't know." "Shut up!" the man screamed. Maya, now fully upright, steadied her breath. This was it. She looked once more at Wade. He gave a half nod, barely perceptible, and in the next instant, they moved. Wade dropped low, spinning out of the gunman's grip. In the same split second, Maya lunged and drove her heel hard into the attacker's wrist, a clean, practice strike. The gun flew across the marble floor. Guests screamed again. The second assailant turned, shocked. But the weapon was already gone, clattering beneath a table. The first gunman stumbled, furious, reaching for anything, but Maya was already between him and Wade. And now, for the first time all night, she was in control. Before either assailant could recover, a rush of security men, off-duty officers, and dinner guests in suits surged forward. Several tackled the second gunman, others pinned the first to the floor. Cuffs clicked, zip ties tightened, two masked faces hit the marble. Breathing hard, one of the guests turned to Maya. "Who the hell are you?" Another followed, voice sharper. "You're not just staff. No maid does that." Maya looked at the chaos around her, then met their gaze. "I used to be FBI," she said simply. "Until I lost someone. My partner. I walked away after that." A beat of silence. Then, police officers swept in, guns drawn, ordering everyone back. The two restrained attackers were hauled up, screaming and cursing, dragged through the front entrance as flashing lights painted the windows. Wade, still recovering his breath, walked over to Maya. "Thank you," he said, voice low, sincere. "You didn't just save my life. You stopped something much worse." "Ugh." Maya gave a slight nod, her face unreadable. Wade hesitated, then added, "I own a private security firm. Full spectrum protection. We could use someone like you. Someone who doesn't hesitate." Heads turned. The room, already stunned, went silent again. "She's a maid, Cameron," someone whispered behind him. "She's a warrior," Wade corrected. He turned back to Maya. "Come in tomorrow. Let's talk." By morning, headlines across the country exploded. Black maid takes down assassins at billionaire's party. Female ex-fly agent exposed after heroic intervention. Who is Maya Williams, America's new symbol of silent courage? But Maya? She just sat quietly in the back of a patrol car, watching the night sky pass, her reflection in the window stronger than it had looked in years. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like a ghost anymore. The flashing lights outside the hotel still bled through the tall glass windows. When Maya slipped away from the glare of the cameras, she had no taste for the chaos that followed. To the press, the story was already written. A black maid turned hero, a billionaire spared, a conspiracy thwarted. But Maya knew better. It was never that clean. Inside, the ballroom had become a scene of nervous chatter and relief. Guests who minutes ago had screamed in terror now whispered in clusters, half glancing toward the doors where the assassins had been dragged away. Rosa found her in the corner, carrying a tray of untouched champagne flutes like nothing extraordinary had just occurred. "Nina, you can't just disappear after that," Rosa said, voice trembling with worry. "They're all asking for you, even the police chief." "I've had enough questions for one night," Maya replied, setting the tray down. "Let them ask someone else." But Cameron Wade wasn't letting it go. He cut through the clusters of guests with the force of a man used to commanding rooms. His tie was gone, his shirt collar undone, but his eyes burned with the adrenaline of survival. He stopped in front of Maya, lowering his voice so the gawking guests wouldn't hear. "You saved me," he said. "And Blake too. Whether he admits it or not. You kept this from being a bloodbath. I'm not letting you walk away without answers." "Zuh." Maya crossed her arms. "I gave you an answer. I used to be FBI. That's all you need." "No," Wade said, shaking his head. "That's the beginning. You don't move like someone who used to be anything. You move like someone who never stopped." She sighed, glancing at the guests, still watching, whispering, "This isn't the place." "Then come with me," he said. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Now." Against her better judgment, Maya followed him out of the ballroom and into a smaller lounge that had been reserved for VIPs. The room smelled faintly of leather and cigars. Wade closed the door behind them. "Sit," he said, though it came out more like a plea than a command. Maya remained standing. Wade rubbed his temples. "All right. I'll be blunt. Those men, whoever they were, they didn't pick tonight by accident. Blake is involved in something dirty, something dangerous, and now that you've exposed yourself, they'll be coming after you too." Her jaw tightened. "I'm used to that. You shouldn't have to be," he countered. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I have resources, a private security division, staffed with some of the best. But none of them did what you did tonight. None of them kept calm while a gun was pressed to my head. That's why I want you on my team." Maya shook her head. "I told you. I left that world behind." Why?" Her silence stretched. Images she had fought to bury rose again. Ramirez's face in the dust. The sound of comms cutting out. The crushing weight of failure. "I lost someone," she finally said. "Someone I should have saved. And the Bureau decided I wasn't useful anymore. I won't make that mistake again. Because I won't give myself the chance." Wade studied her. "You didn't freeze tonight. You didn't fail. You stopped 2 trained killers with nothing but your eyes and your voice. That doesn't sound like someone broken." "It's not about me," she said sharply. "It's about what happens to the people around me." They held each other's gaze in silence until the muffled sound of footsteps approached. The door opened, and Detective Ramirez, broad-shouldered, weary-eyed, entered with a notepad in hand. "Miss Williams," he said, nodding politely. "You mind giving me a statement? The faster we clear the facts, the faster these people can go home." "No." Maya hesitated, then gave Wade one last look before following Ramirez back into the hallway. The questioning dragged on for nearly an hour. Maya stuck to the basics. She saw the signs, confronted the suspect, and reacted when necessary. She didn't mention the years of training that had sharpened her instincts. She didn't mention Syria, or the missions that had carved scars into her skin and deeper ones into her memory. When the detective finished, Wade was waiting again. "They're gone," he said, "loaded into the cruisers. The press will eat this up all week." "I don't care about the press." "Well, they care about you," Wade said. "They're already calling you the Maid of Manhattan." Maya groaned softly. "That's ridiculous." "That's branding," Wade said with a smirk. "And branding is power." She shot him a look that silenced his smile. Rosa appeared, placing a shawl over Maya's shoulders. "You did good tonight, mija. Don't let anyone tell you different." Maya softened at Rosa's touch. But the weight in her chest remained. She had revealed too much. She had stepped out of the shadows she had carefully built around herself. And now there would be consequences. As the guests finally began to leave, Wade leaned closer. "Think about what I said. My offer stands. You don't have to decide tonight. But don't shut the door." Maya didn't answer. Later, when the hotel was nearly empty, she slipped out the staff entrance and into the cool night. Sirens were still flashing down the block, and reporters huddled around the main entrance like vultures. She pulled her coat tighter and walked quickly toward the subway. The city's noise wrapped around her, car horns, distant laughter, the rhythmic clatter of trains below. For a moment, she let herself disappear into it, just another face among millions. But she could feel it, the eyes on her, the story already spreading faster than she could outrun it. By morning, the news would paint her as a hero. By nightfall, strangers would know her name. And somewhere in the shadows, the men behind tonight's attack would know it too. Maya paused at the top of the subway stairs, glancing back toward the skyline. "This isn't over," she whispered. And for the first time in years, she felt the old fire flicker alive again, not the fire of rage, but of duty. The one she thought she had buried with Ramirez in the dust. The fire that told her she was not done fighting. Not yet. The morning after the gala, the city woke up to her name. Maid turns hero at Wade Gala. Black housekeeper foils assassins. From the kitchen to the headlines, who is Maya Williams? Every headline screamed it. Every news anchor recited it with breathless urgency. And every guest who had been in that glittering ballroom the night before told the story as if they themselves had been the ones staring down the barrel of a gun. Maya Williams sat in her small apartment in Harlem, the television muted. She didn't need to hear the words. The images alone were enough. Her face, grainy but clear, plastered across the screen. A still frame of her standing tall, eyes unshaken, while the gunman's hand trembled. She turned the television off. The kettle on her stove hissed, pulling her back to the present. She poured water into a chipped mug, the steam fogging her face. But even with tea warming her hands, she couldn't shake the cold knot in her stomach. She had spent 2 years building a quiet life, anonymous, forgettable, safe. One night had ripped all of it apart. A knock rattled her door. She froze. "Maya, it's Rosa," came the voice. Relieved, Maya opened the door. Rosa stood there with a shopping bag in hand, her eyes brimming with both pride and worry. "Nina, you're all over the news," Rosa said, stepping inside. "They won't stop talking about you. Half the people are calling you a hero. The other half," she hesitated, "they want to know why a maid moves like a soldier." Maya exhaled. "Because I was one." Rosa set the bag down. "You can't keep hiding it. They'll dig it up anyway." Maya sat at the table, staring into her tea. "I don't want them to know. The bureau was my past. That past killed Ramirez. It almost killed me. It's over." Rosa reached across the table, placing a hand over Maya's. "Maybe the past isn't finished with you." Lau. Before Maya could respond, her phone buzzed. A private number. She almost let it go, but instinct told her otherwise. She answered. "Maya Williams?" The voice was clipped, professional. "This is Agent Torres, FBI. We need to talk." Her stomach tightened. "I'm not FBI anymore." "Maybe not. But you were one of ours, and last night you stepped into something bigger than you realize. The men you helped take down aren't just hired guns. They're connected, international. If you think it's over, you're wrong." The line went dead before she could answer. Maya sat in silence, the weight of the words pressing into her chest. Rosa watched her, worry deepening. "You see?" Rosa whispered. "The past doesn't stay buried." Later that afternoon, Maya found herself walking through the towering glass doors of Wade Enterprises. She had told herself she wouldn't go. She had promised she would walk away, but something inside her, duty, guilt, maybe even curiosity, pulled her there. The receptionist didn't even ask her name. "Mr. Wade is expecting you." She was led into a high-rise office overlooking Central Park. Cameron Wade stood near the window, his suit crisp, his expression unreadable. He turned as she entered, a half-smile tugging at his mouth. "I was wondering if you'd come," he said. "I shouldn't have," Maya replied. "Maybe, but you did." He gestured for her to sit. She remained standing. "You know what the news is saying?" he asked. "They're calling you fearless." Some are calling you reckless. Personally, I think they're both right. Maya crossed her arms. I didn't do it for headlines. I know. You did it because it's who you are. He leaned against the desk. And that's exactly why I want you here. Not as staff. As protection. As leadership in my security division. You have what money can't buy: instincts. The kind that save lives. Maya shook her head. I already told you. I left that life behind. Wade studied her carefully. Then answer me one question. Why didn't you freeze last night? Why didn't you run like everyone else? Her silence stretched. Then, almost against her will, she said quietly, because I've already lived through worse. Wade nodded, as if he'd been waiting for that answer. Then you know better than anyone that danger doesn't care whether you're ready. It finds you anyway. Last night proved that, and it won't be the last time. Before Maya could reply, the office door burst open. Lyle Turner, Wade's assistant, strode in with a tablet in hand. Sir, you need to see this, he said, ignoring Maya completely. Wade glanced at the screen, his face darkened. When? An hour ago. Midtown. Same signature. 2 more dead. Maya stepped closer. What happened? Lyle shot her a look. This doesn't concern you. She just saved your boss's life, Maya said sharply. It concerns me. Wade held up a hand. Show her. Lyle hesitated, then turned the screen. Grainy surveillance footage showed a black SUV pulling up to a private office building. 2 masked men stepped out, automatic weapons in hand. Minutes later, they left calmly, leaving chaos inside. Same crew? Maya asked. Same network, Wade said grimly. And they're not stopping. Maya studied the footage, her instincts kicking back to life. The way they moved, the precision, the cold exit. She recognized the patterns. They're professionals, she murmured, but sloppy enough to get caught on camera. That means they're sending a message. Wade nodded. And you know how to read it. Maya looked at him. He wasn't asking this time. He was certain. Her chest tightened. She thought of Ramirez again, of the promises she'd made to never put herself back in this position. But she also thought of last night, the faces in the crowd, the fear in their eyes, the relief when the gun was kicked away. She thought of Rosa's words. Maybe the past isn't finished with you. Finally, she exhaled. I'll help, but not because I work for you, because I need to know who sent them. A slow smile spread across Wade's face. Fair enough. For now, consider this a partnership. He extended his hand. She stared at it for a moment before shaking it. His grip was firm, steady. For the first time since she left the bureau, Maya felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Not back to who she had been. Not yet, but toward something new. As she left the office, reporters swarmed the lobby, their cameras flashing like lightning. Questions flew. Maya, how did you stop them? Are you joining Wade's team? Were you really FBI? She said nothing, pushing past them into the cold air outside. The city roared around her. Alive, chaotic, relentless, and somewhere within it, enemies were moving pieces across a board she had only just stepped back onto. Maya pulled her coat tighter and walked into the crowd. Her quiet life was over. The fight she had avoided for years had come looking for her. And this time, she wasn't running. By the time Maya returned to her apartment that evening, exhaustion had draped itself over her shoulders like a lead blanket. The day had been a blur of reporters outside her building, strangers recognizing her on the subway, and whispers that clung to her like a second skin. She had lived invisible for years. Now, she couldn't vanish if she tried. She locked the door behind her and leaned against it, closing her eyes. Silence filled the room. For a moment, she let herself imagine that none of it had happened, that she could wake up tomorrow, head to the Wade estate, and polish silver in the kitchen. But the image dissolved as quickly as it came. She wasn't that woman anymore. And maybe she never had been. The phone rang. Maya hesitated before answering. Williams, the voice said crisply. This is Agent Torres. You remember me? Maya's chest tightened. I remember the bureau. I don't remember you. I came in after you left, but I know your file. And I know what happened to Ramirez. The air in the room seemed to thicken. You don't get to say his name. No. Torres's voice softened, but only slightly. Fair. But you need to hear me. The men you faced at the gala aren't just small-time operators. They're contracted by a syndicate we've been tracking for years, an arms pipeline that stretches from New York to Istanbul. Blake's deals put him on their radar, and now they've moved into open action. That means they're desperate, and desperate men are dangerous. I'm not FBI anymore. No, Torres said, but they don't care. They've seen your face. They know you stopped them. That makes you a target, whether you like it or not. The line went dead. Maya lowered the phone slowly. She stared at it for a long time before setting it down on the counter. Rosa's words echoed in her mind again. Maybe the past isn't finished with you. Sleep didn't come easy that night. When it did, it was filled with ghosts, Ramirez's hand slipping out of hers. The burning of sandstorms in her lungs. The sound of gunfire tearing through plaster walls. She woke before dawn, drenched in sweat. The next morning, Cameron Wade's car waited outside her building. Black, sleek, windows tinted. He hadn't called ahead. He didn't need to. She slid into the back seat, the leather too soft for her taste. Wade was already inside, sipping coffee from a paper cup. You didn't answer my calls, he said. I didn't want to. And yet you're here. Maya sighed. What do you want from me, Wade? He studied her for a long moment. To be honest, I want someone I can trust. Last night made one thing clear. My security team isn't enough. They're trained, they're armed, but they're predictable. You're not. That's what scares people like those men, and that's what I need. I told you before, I don't do this anymore. Maybe not for them, Wade said, but you did it for me, and I think you'll do it again, because whether you admit it or not, it's who you are. Maya turned to look out the window as the city blurred by. He wasn't entirely wrong. The part of her that had stepped forward in that ballroom hadn't hesitated. That part had never died. They arrived at Wade Enterprises just after 8. Reporters swarmed the entrance, cameras flashing, voices calling Maya's name. Wade's security pushed them back, but their questions carried through the glass. Maya, are you joining Wade's security team? Were you really FBI? Do you consider yourself a hero? She kept her face expressionless as she walked past them. Inside, Wade led her to a private conference room. On the table were photographs, dossiers, and surveillance shots. These are the men you stopped, he said, spreading the photos out. But they're just soldiers. The man we want, the man funding this, is still out there, and he won't stop. Maya studied the photos. The faces were young, hardened, but not experienced enough to hide their tells. Hired hands, disposable. You think Blake is still the target? She asked. Wade nodded. He knows too much, and if they don't silence him, he could take a lot of people down with him, including me. Maya looked up sharply. You? Wade exhaled. Not directly. But my investments are tangled with his. If Blake falls, they'll come sniffing around my house too. That's why I can't afford another mistake. That's why I need you. Before Maya could answer, the door opened. Lyle Turner walked in, tablet in hand, eyes narrowing when he saw her. She doesn't belong in this room, Lyle snapped. She belongs wherever I say she belongs, Wade replied evenly. Lyle scoffed. She's a liability, a headline. The more we drag her into this, the more attention we bring. You want this company tied to a former FBI dropout with a tragic backstory? Maya's jaw tightened. She forced her voice to stay calm. Careful. Oh, what? Lyle sneered. You'll kick me like you did the gunman? Wade's voice cut through the tension. That's enough. Lyle, leave us. Lyle's glare lingered on Maya, but he obeyed, slamming the door behind him. Wade rubbed his temples. Ignore him. He doesn't see what I see. And what is that? Maya asked. A fighter who doesn't quit, Wade said, even when she thinks she already has. Maya looked down at the photos again. The fire inside her, the one she had tried so hard to bury, was beginning to burn hotter. You want my help? She said finally. Then I need access. Files, contacts, anything the Bureau has. And I need Blake, alone. If I'm going to figure out who's pulling the strings, I need to look him in the eye. Wade smiled faintly. That can be arranged. As Maya left the building later that morning, the city felt different. Every shadow seemed sharper. Every corner held a pair of eyes. She knew the syndicate wouldn't wait long. They had already tried once. They would try again. But this time, she wasn't just reacting. This time, she was hunting. The past was back, and Maya Williams was done running from it. The sun had barely risen when Maya found herself outside a discreet brownstone on the Upper East Side. The kind of place that screamed old money and quiet scandals. Wade's people had arranged it, as promised. Inside was Arthur Blake, the man who had been the target of the assassin's bullets, and the reason she was now standing in the shadows again. Two plainclothes security men opened the door without a word, their eyes betraying a mix of recognition and wariness. They had seen the headlines. Everyone had. As she stepped in, the air smelled of stale coffee and fear. Blake sat at a wide oak table, his expensive suit rumpled, his eyes bloodshot. He looked nothing like the powerful contractor from the gala. He looked hunted. "You," he said, his voice rasping. "The Maid. Ex-FBI," she corrected sharply. "And the only reason you're alive right now." Blake winced, running a hand down his face. "I didn't ask for a savior." "No," Maya said, pulling out a chair across from him. "But you got one, and now you're going to give me something in return, the truth." He laughed bitterly. "You think you can scare me into confessing? The Bureau tried that for years. They had nothing." "I'm not the Bureau," Maya said. Her voice dropped, cool and steady. "And I don't need to scare you. I just need you to know this. The men who came for you aren't finished. They'll try again. And next time, no one may be there to stop them." For the first time, Blake's bravado cracked. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "They don't want me to testify. If I open my mouth, I take down more than just a syndicate. Senators, CEOs, generals' names you see on magazine covers. They're all eating from the same trough. And I was stupid enough to think I could get out clean." Maya studied him. "So you admit you were part of it?" His eyes flickered with shame. "I signed contracts I shouldn't have. Looked the other way when weapons went missing. It was profit. Plain and simple. But then I saw the reports. Soldiers dead. Kids in war zones with rifles they shouldn't even recognize. That's when I knew I couldn't keep quiet anymore." Maya's chest tightened. She thought of Ramirez, of the missions that had gone sideways because someone sold out. "And you waited until now to find a conscience?" Blake slammed his fist on the table. "You think it's that simple? You think walking away is free? The moment I told the wrong person I wanted out, I had a target on my back. You saw what happened. They'll kill anyone to keep me silent." Maya leaned back, crossing her arms. "Then help me make sure they fail. Who's pulling the strings? Who's giving the orders?" He shook his head violently. "If I say the name out loud, we're both dead before sundown." "Then write it," Maya pressed. "Give me something I can use." "Because I don't operate on fear, Blake. I operate on facts. And right now, all I see is a man who wants protection without paying the price of the truth." Blake stared at her for a long moment, his hands trembling. Finally, he pulled a pen from his pocket, scribbled a name on a scrap of paper, and slid it across the table. Maya didn't look at it immediately. She watched his face instead. The way his jaw clenched. The way sweat beaded on his forehead. Only when he pulled his hand away did she glance down. One name, clean, legible, familiar. Her blood ran cold. It wasn't a crime boss or a foreign arms dealer. It was someone she had once seen in bureau briefings, shaking hands with politicians, a man she had believed untouchable. Before she could speak, the sound of shattering glass cut through the room. A flash of light burst across the walls. The security men shouted, diving toward the windows. "Down," Maya barked, throwing herself over Blake as bullets ripped through the curtains. The attack lasted seconds but felt endless. When silence fell, the brownstone reeked of gunpowder and fear. One guard lay bleeding, the other shouting into his radio for backup. Maya pulled Blake to his feet, her voice firm. "They know you talked. We move now." As they rushed toward the back exit, Blake clutched her arm. "I told you, if that name gets out, save it," Maya snapped. "You've already put us both in the crosshairs." They spilled into the alley, tires screeching as a black SUV roared past the curb. Maya pushed Blake into cover just as the rear window rolled down and another muzzle appeared. A shot rang out, sparks dancing on the brick wall above her head. She fired back her weapon drawn so quickly it was as if she had never stopped carrying it. The SUV swerved, speeding off into the morning traffic. Blake panted, eyes wide. You still carry? Old habits, Maya said, shoving the gun back into her waistband. Now shut up and move. No. By the time they reached a safe car Wade had sent, Blake was shaking so hard he could barely speak. Maya shoved him inside and slid in after him. Wade's driver glanced back. Orders, Miss Williams? Take us to Wade. Now. The car peeled away, and Maya finally looked at the scrap of paper still clenched in her fist. The name glared up at her, sharp as a blade. She whispered it under her breath, a curse and a vow all at once. When they reached Wade's office, he was waiting, calm as ever, a glass of whiskey untouched on his desk. You look like hell, he said, eyeing Blake's disheveled state. They found us, Maya said flatly. She tossed the paper onto his desk. And this is why. Wade picked it up. His eyes narrowed. Well, he said slowly, that's going to make things interesting. Blake collapsed into a chair, his face pale. You don't understand. If that man knows I named him, he already knows, Maya cut in. That ambush wasn't random. It was a warning. Next time, it won't miss. Wade tapped the paper thoughtfully. Then we don't wait for next time. We go after him first. Maya leaned forward, her voice sharp. If you're serious about this, you need to understand something. This isn't about your company's reputation or protecting your investments. This is about dismantling a machine built on blood. And once we start, there's no turning back. Wade met her stare, unflinching. Then we start. Maya sat back, her pulse steady despite the storm building around them. She had sworn she would never come back to this world, but the world had come for her anyway. And now, with Ramirez's ghost still heavy on her shoulders, she knew there was only one way forward. Fight. As she rose from her seat, she felt the fire she had buried for years blaze higher. This wasn't just survival anymore. It was justice. And for the first time since the desert sands swallowed her past, Maya Williams was ready to face the war ahead. Rain fell over Manhattan like a curtain of gray, streaking the glass walls of Wade Enterprises. Inside the fortified conference room, the atmosphere was heavier than the storm outside. Maya stood with her arms crossed, staring at the whiteboard now littered with photographs and documents. The name Blake had scrawled the name of a man she once saw shaking hands with senators sat in bold letters at the center of it all. Richard Kane. Former defense strategist. Now a corporate magnate who held contracts with half the government. To the public, he was a philanthropist with a gleaming smile and handshakes for every photo op. But to Maya, he was something else entirely. The ghost behind too many dead bodies in too many forgotten corners of the world. Blake sat slumped at the far end of the table, pale and jittery. He hadn't stopped shaking since the attack. Wade sat across from Maya, composed but restless, his fingers tapping rhythmically against the glass. You understand what we're up against now, Maya said finally. Her voice cut through the silence like a blade. This isn't a petty syndicate. Kane has power, resources, and reach. If we move against him, we don't just poke the bear, we step into its den. And if we don't? Wade asked. Then he'll keep coming. Blake is the loose thread, and She paused, meeting Wade's eyes. I pulled at it. Wade gave a small, grim smile. Then let's unravel the whole damn sweater. Blake slammed his hands on the table, desperation spilling out. You don't get it. Kane isn't someone you fight. He's someone you survive. I shouldn't have written his name down. You should burn that paper and forget I said anything. Maya leaned forward, her gaze sharp. That's exactly what he counts on, fear. Silence. People like you letting him rot the system from the inside out. Well, I'm not afraid of him. Her words hung in the air. Wade studied her, something like admiration flickering behind his eyes. Neither am I, he said. Before Blake could argue again, the door burst open and Lyle Turner stormed in, tablet in hand. We've got a problem, he said, his tone as sharp as his tailored suit. What now? Wade asked. Lyle turned the screen toward them. A news feed was streaming live. The anchor's voice was tense. Anonymous sources have revealed that Arthur Blake, prominent defense contractor, is currently in protective custody after an alleged assassination attempt. Sources also claim a former FBI agent was involved in stopping the attackers. Questions are now being raised about her identity and her connection to Wade Enterprises. Maya's stomach tightened. They're leaking it, Lyle said. Kane's people are already moving to spin the narrative. By the end of the day, the press will be painting Maya as a rogue operative who endangered civilians at the gala. Blake buried his face in his hands. It's starting. This is how he destroys people. Maya forced herself to stay calm, though her pulse quickened. Then we get ahead of it. If Kane wants to make me the story, we make the truth louder than his lies. Wade stood, determination hardening his features. Agreed. We hold a press conference this afternoon. Maya stands with me, and we tell the world exactly what happened. Maya shook her head. That's a mistake. He wants me visible. Because the more visible I am, the bigger target I become. You think he won't send another team? This time in daylight, in front of cameras? She's right, Blake muttered. He doesn't care about collateral damage. He'll kill her and you, Wade. If it means protecting himself. No. For a long moment, silence pressed down on the room, broken only by the rain. Finally, Maya said, "We don't win this by standing in front of cameras. We win it by pulling the rug out from under him. Find the money, find the contracts, find the people he's bought. That's how you bring Kane down." Wade studied her, then slowly nodded. "So we go underground." Lyle's lips thinned. "And while you two play vigilantes, what happens to this company? To the board? To the investors who are already spooked?" "Let me worry about the company," Wade snapped. "Your job is to keep the building running. Maya's job is to keep me alive." Maya's expression didn't change, but inside she felt the weight of the words. She hadn't accepted a job yet. Not officially. But with each passing hour, it felt less like a choice and more like inevitability. By late afternoon, Maya slipped back into the city alone. Wade wanted her nearby, but she insisted on space. She needed the air, needed the noise of the streets to clear her head. Rain slicked off her hood as she walked through Times Square, neon lights glowing against puddles at her feet. Voices followed her, snippets of conversation from strangers reading headlines off their phones. "Did you hear about that maid who stopped the shooters?" "Not a maid, she used to be FBI, I think." Yeah, but they're saying she went rogue. Probably has a record." "I don't care, I'd want her on my side." Maya kept walking, her jaw tight. Fame was a noose. Every whisper, every camera flash, made her easier to track. And if Kane wanted her silenced, she had just become the loudest voice in the city. She ducked into a diner on the corner, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and the smell of burnt coffee in the air. Slipping into the back, she ordered nothing, just sat with her back to the wall. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "You should have stayed in the kitchen," a distorted voice said. "Now you've made yourself the problem, and problems get solved." The line went dead. Maya's grip tightened on the phone. She stared at the reflection in the diner's window. Her own face. Steady but weary. Kane's people were already watching. Already reaching out. She couldn't run anymore. By the time she returned to Wade Enterprises that night, she had made her choice. She found him in his office, the city glowing behind him. "I'm in," she said simply. "But this isn't about working for your company. This is about finishing something I should have finished years ago." Wade rose slowly, relief flickering in his eyes. "Then we're in this together." Maya stepped closer, her voice low. "If we do this, there's no halfway. No boardroom politics, no PR spin. We go after Kane head on, and if you're not ready for that, walk away now." Wade didn't flinch. "I don't walk away." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Good, because neither do I." As rain pounded against the windows, Maya felt the lines being drawn. Kane had resources, power, and fear on his side, but she had something else resolve, sharpened by loss, by guilt, by ghosts that refused to stay buried. For the first time in years, she wasn't just surviving. She was preparing for war. The following morning began not with the blare of sirens or the hum of reporters, but with silence. Maya sat alone in Wade's private security wing, a windowless room deep within his corporate tower. On the walls hung maps of New York, red pins marking sites of interest, Kane's suspected fronts, warehouses tied to shell companies, and government offices too well connected to touch. The silence pressed in, broken only by the low hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. Her hand traced the scar beneath her jawline as her eyes followed the web of strings connecting one photo to another. Each pin, each line, was a reminder of what Kane had built, a machine of corruption and death, grinding forward for decades. And she knew one truth with brutal certainty. If they wanted to tear that machine apart, they had to start with its gears, not its face. She exhaled slowly. Memory clawed at her chest. She could see Ramirez again, crouched beside her in that dim Syrian safe house, his voice steady, even as chaos erupted around them. "We finished the mission, Maya. No matter the cost." He had meant it, and he had paid it. A knock jolted her from the memory. Wade stepped in, dressed in a sharp charcoal suit, his tie perfectly knotted. He carried 2 coffees, setting one in front of her. "You didn't sleep," he said. "I don't," Maya replied, eyes still on the map. Wade studied her for a moment. "You know, I built this company because I got tired of other people deciding my fate. But now I realize Kane's been deciding it all along. He's in every contract, every deal. Even when I thought I was independent, I was in his shadow." Maya looked at him. "Then you understand what we're facing. If we go after Kane, you're not just risking money, you're risking your life. He won't hesitate to cut you down if you get in his way." Wade gave a small smile. "Maybe that's why I need you." Before Maya could respond, the door opened again. Lyle Turner entered, his tablet in hand, expression sour as ever. "Bad news. FBI's making noise. They want to pull Blake into federal custody. They're hinting that keeping him here is obstruction." Maya's jaw tightened. "Blake won't survive a transfer. Kane has people in every corridor of that system. The second he leaves this building, he's dead." Lyle scoffed. "And keeping him here makes us what? Saints? No, it makes us accomplices." "Nah, we're already accomplices," Maya shot back. "The second Wade stood next to me in that ballroom. The second the world saw us together, we became part of this fight. There's no stepping back now." For once, Wade didn't argue. He only said, "We keep Blake. If the Bureau wants him, they'll have to come through us." Lyle muttered something under his breath and stormed out. Maya rubbed her temples. "You realize he's right about one thing. Kane won't just come with bullets this time. He'll come with lawyers, politicians, and headlines. Guns are easy, lies are harder." Wade leaned forward, his voice steady. "Then we hit him with truth before he hits us with lies." That afternoon, Maya went to see Blake again. He was holed up in a secure suite, pacing like a caged animal. The moment she entered, his eyes narrowed. "You shouldn't be here," he snapped. "Why? Afraid your new friends will see us together?" she asked. Blake's shoulders slumped. "You don't understand. Kane doesn't forgive. He doesn't forget. He'll strip me of everything and bury me before anyone can blink." Maya stepped closer, her voice low but firm. "You think you're the first man he's broken? Ramirez is dead because of him. Soldiers are dead. Families torn apart. You kept your silence while the machine kept turning. If you want redemption, this is your chance. You testify. You name names. You give me everything you've got." Blake shook his head violently. "You don't get it. The moment I say his name in public, I sign my death warrant." Maya leaned in, her eyes burning into his. "You already did. At that table yesterday, when you wrote his name down. There's no going back. You're marked whether you talk or not. So the only choice you have left is this: do you die a coward, or do you die making it count?" Blake flinched, her words slicing through his fear. He sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. For the first time, she saw not arrogance but a man undone by guilt. When she left the suite, Rosa was waiting in the hallway, holding a bag of food she had smuggled past security. "You push too hard, mija," Rosa said softly. Maya sighed. "If I don't push, he breaks. And if he breaks, we all pay the price." Rosa reached up, cupping Maya's face like a mother might. "I see it in your eyes, the ghosts you carry. But you can't keep punishing yourself for the ones you lost. You can only fight for the ones still breathing." The words lingered as Maya returned to the security room. She traced the scar on her jaw again, thinking of Ramirez, of the oath she had once sworn and then abandoned. Rosa was right. The dead couldn't be saved, but the living, they still had a chance. That night, Maya and Wade sat across from each other, the city skyline glowing between them. Wade poured himself a drink, his voice quieter than usual. "You know," he said, "I watched you in that ballroom, standing against a man with a gun pointed at my head, and for a second, I thought you weren't afraid of anything." Maya's lips curved into a sad smile. "Fear's always there. The trick is not letting it own you." Wade raised his glass. "Then here's to not being owned." She didn't toast. She only met his eyes, steady and unflinching. "Tomorrow we start digging. Kane thinks he controls the game. Let's prove him wrong." "Nah." As Wade drank, Maya turned back to the window. Rain still streaked the glass, blurring the lights of the city. Somewhere out there, Kane was tightening his grip. But somewhere inside her, the fire that had been smothered for years burned hotter than ever. She whispered to herself, barely audible, "This time, I don't fail." And with that vow, Maya Williams stepped fully back into the life she had sworn she'd left behind, not as a maid, not as a ghost, but as a fighter reborn. The war with Kane had begun, and she was ready to face every scar it would carve. The storm that had blanketed the city the night before cleared by dawn, leaving Manhattan damp and gleaming under pale sunlight. But inside Wade Enterprises, the air was still heavy. The morning meeting in the secured boardroom wasn't about shareholders or quarterly reports. It was war council. Maya stood at the head of the table, her posture rigid, eyes scanning the room. Beside her sat Wade, composed as always. But she noticed the tension in his jaw. Across from them, Lyle Turner tapped irritably at his tablet, clearly unimpressed by her presence. And at the far corner sat Arthur Blake, looking like a ghost in a tailored suit, his fingers twitching as if they couldn't stop reliving the sound of bullets. Maya broke the silence. "Kane is the architect of this network. He hides behind layers of contractors, politicians, and corporations. But every weapon that vanishes, every shipment that turns up in a war zone, traces back to him. If we want to bring him down, we need evidence, real, undeniable evidence. Testimony isn't enough. We need the paper trail." Blake scoffed. "You think I haven't tried? Every ledger, every contract was scrubbed clean. Kane doesn't leave crumbs. Everyone leaves something," Maya replied firmly. "A shell company, a blind account, a transaction at the wrong hour. We find one thread, and we pull until the whole thing unravels." Lyle leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Sounds heroic, but what you're describing takes months, maybe years. Meanwhile, Kane destroys reputations overnight. He's already turned the press against you, Williams. By next week, the headlines will say you staged the attack yourself." Wade cut in, his voice sharp. "Enough, Lyle. Maya's right. Evidence is our weapon. We're not going to beat Kane with press releases or boardroom debates. We beat him by proving what he islanded." Maya glanced at Wade, surprised by the conviction in his tone. She had expected resistance, but he was all in now. Perhaps too far in to back out. Blake shifted uncomfortably. "If I help you, I need guarantees. Witness protection, relocation, new identity." "Protection you'll only get if you cooperate fully," Maya interrupted. "No more half-truths, no more bargaining. If we're risking our lives, you risk yours too." Blake looked away, ashamed but silent. Wade leaned forward. "So where do we start?" Maya pointed at the map on the screen. "Kane's operations run through dozens of shell companies. But there's one that doesn't fit the pattern: Iron Shield Logistics. It's new, barely 3 years old, but suddenly they're handling shipments worth billions. And their warehouse in Brooklyn? It's supposedly storing farm equipment, except it has enough security to guard Fort Knox." Wade frowned. "You think that's the hub?" "I think that's where the paper trail begins," Maya said. Blake rubbed his temples. "I know Iron Shield. Kane uses it as a buffer. If you dig there, you'll find something, but you'll also be painting a target the size of Manhattan on your back." Maya's lips pressed into a thin line. "Then we'll have to move faster than they can aim." Later that afternoon, Maya prepared alone in the security wing. She strapped on her holster, checked her weapon, slipped on gloves. The familiar ritual calmed her. though it also reminded her of everything she had sworn she'd left behind. Each buckle and strap whispered of nights in hostile territory, of missions where the line between hunter and hunted blurred. She caught her reflection in the mirror, hard eyes, scar beneath her jawline, posture coiled for action. She no longer looked like the maid who polished silver trays. She looked like the woman she had been before Ramirez fell, and that terrified her more than Kane's men ever could. The door opened, and Wade stepped inside. He wasn't in a suit this time. Dark jacket, practical boots, less billionaire, more man preparing to step into danger. "You're coming with me?" Maya asked, raising an eyebrow. He smirked faintly. "You think I'm going to let you walk into Kane's den alone? I've survived boardrooms full of wolves. I can survive this." This isn't a boardroom," Maya warned. "I know, but if I want to understand the world Kane controls, I need to see it with my own eyes." Maya studied him for a moment. Against her instincts, she nodded. "Fine. But you follow my lead. You do exactly what I say, when I say it. One mistake, and we're both dead." He met her gaze without flinching. Understood. By nightfall, they were parked across from the Iron Shield warehouse in a nondescript van. Rain slicked the streets again, glinting off the razor wire that crowned the perimeter fence. Floodlights swept the yard, and guards with rifles paced in pairs. "This isn't farm equipment storage," Wade muttered. "No," Maya agreed, watching through binoculars. "This is a fortress, which means whatever's inside is worth protecting." Zuber. She outlined the plan with crisp efficiency. They'd breach through a blind spot in the eastern fence, bypass the cameras with a jammer she'd brought, and slip inside through a loading bay. Quick, silent, in and out. Wade listened carefully, no protest in his expression. He wasn't a soldier, but he was willing. That counted for something. Minutes later, they moved. Maya's body flowed with muscle memory, swift, precise, low to the ground.